Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Cosmoctopus from Paper Fort Games. Cosmoctopus, designed by Henry Audubon, is a 1 to 4 player game in which players are controlling the Great Inky One. The Great Inky One over here is going to be navigating through the depths of space, trying to collect various goodies, various resource tokens, using those to trade in for cards, ultimately trying to get 8 tentacles into each individual player's little board here. This is not a cooperative experience, and the first player to get all 8 tentacles filled over here, utilizing and working together with the Great Inky One, will win the game. Now in the game, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving the Great Inky One around the board. Now, I do have it set up for the basic game over here. The basic game involves you having the core 8 tiles and then one of 4 possible special tiles you'll have into the game. There are additional layouts you can do as well as small little things like portals to be able to give you different, areas that connect. There's a bunch of other things you could do for the setup. This is the core basic setup. And you'll be taking Cosmoctopus and then moving him from one location to another location, moving adjacently and orthogonally around the board. So for example, I can move over here and then collect 3 of these black inky tokens over here. Now that's what you can do over there as you're going through it, but you can also discard cards and resources in the game as necessary. You see, you're going to start the game with a few resources, 2 of each type, and you're going to start the game with 5 cards, and you can use those cards and resources, discarding them at any point to be able to move further across the vast reaches of the unknown. So for example, maybe I really want to go to this space from here instead, so instead of getting these 3 black tokens, I'll discard a card, and I'll go 1, 2, and be able to do that spot instead. So you start by moving the Great Inky One around the board, which is the main way you're going to be gathering cards and resources. You'll see over here we have 3 red, 3 green, 3 yellow, and 3 black resources. And then we have those as well with collecting 1, but also collecting a card from the card row. So you have those same varieties of getting resources, plus a card from the card row, plus whatever the special tile is. In this case, take all cards of the same type from the card row, because there are a bunch of types of cards, 4 specific types to be, well, specific. Once you're done with that, you have the optional ability to go ahead and play a card. Now, there's a lot of tableau building, lots of things happening. We haven't really dove into it, but you have the opportunity to play a card. In addition, I have 5 red cards in my hand. Didn't even know that. I should shuffle this up again over here. But you'll have the opportunity to play a card in addition to moving around the board. So you can move around the board, that's mandatory. You can discard resources and or cards to move further around the board. And then you can go ahead and play a card every single turn. Now cards cost whatever's in the top left corner over here. So for example, this Star Shell Tortoise requires 3 green resources and 2 of any resource, which could be green or could be, well, any. I did say any resource. It could be any resource that you want. And when you have this green card over here, I'm going to go through the 4 card types. The way these green card works is they're going to go into your tableau in front of you. And then in the future, when you collect resources, starting from the one that spreads outwards, in this case yellow, whenever you go ahead, the next time you collect yellow resources, collect a yellow resource and a card. So I'll go ahead and take this red card, add to my hand, replace the card marker with another card, and I can go ahead and then put that yellow resource, instead of taking it for myself, I can place it onto the card. Note that you cannot place resources you already have onto the cards. You have to earn them, and when you earn them, you can put them into your supply or onto the card. It's worth noting at the end of your turn, you must discard down to 8 of each resource type and 8 cards. So that's going to be the way these work over here as far as filling them up. When it's completely full, you will get a tentacle plus an ability, which in this case is moving to a specific tile, moving to this tile, and then taking that effect when you fill up this card. In general, the green cards will almost always give you will always give you a tentacle, and then they'll also give you some sort of effect over here. Play a red card without paying its cost, gather a bunch of resources over here. So that's what you're trying to do as far as the green cards. Now the red cards, speaking of playing a red card without paying its cost, red cards over here will often just give you as a one-time effect whatever's on the bottom and then discard it. So you pay 3 red, 3 of anything, and then you go ahead and gather 8 resources, and this symbol means you also take another turn, so you can go ahead and play more cards in the game, trying to go ahead and play this card or whatever card you want after that red card. Speaking of these cards over here, this actually card is one of these starter cards. We should not talk about those. Those are going to come out later. Let's go ahead and show you a black card over here. This black card over here costs you 3 black resources, Tragedy of a Trillion Suns, and the black cards are generally tableau building. They're going to have various different effects on them, but giving you some sort of discounts towards future cards, and this has a special ability on it. But in this case, the Tragedy of a Trillion Suns will give you a discount of 2 green towards any green purchases. So this is where some of the tableau building comes into play, because this one that costs 8 will give you a discount of 3 of anything, although to be clear, not a discount of 3 of anything, but rather whenever you see a gray cost, it reduces that gray cost. So lowers the anything cost, but doesn't actually lower it by anything. Hopefully that makes sense to you. But over here, these black cards, as you build them up, they're going to make all your other cards cheaper, building up a tableau, which is great, unless of course somebody's about to win, which happens to me because I like tableau building, even if it means that I'm not winning. Then from over here, we have the yellow cards. Yellow cards are going to give you sort of an additional tableau building, although more in the form of abilities. In this case, this perplexing omnibox is going to cost you 2 yellow and 1 of anything, and whenever you gather green, you gather +1 green. You can see the same thing over here for this one. Whenever you gather black, you get +1 black. Some other examples would be, let's see something showing you different. This one is whenever you fill your open ink slots with ink from the bank. In other words, whenever you have these green cards, and as soon as a black spot is open, you fill it immediately from the bank, so you don't have to try to navigate and try to gather tokens. Getting a bunch of these over here will really help you start to fill up green cards faster. We have Scratch Prism. Whenever you get a tentacle, you're going to be drawing cards, and so you have all these different abilities you go have as far as ways to build up your tableau. So once again, a quick recap of the card types. We're gonna have the black cards, which give you the tableau building in the form of discounts. We're going to have yellow cards, which give you tableau building in the form of abilities. You'll have red cards, which give you one-time effects, and often will let you do additional things like playing more cards. And you'll have green cards, which is the main way of getting tentacles. There are other ways of getting tentacles, including some red cards, but the green cards will give you tentacles, but you have to work your way towards earning them. Now, a few other things going on in this game, because there are a few other things. First of all, there's this black card we haven't talked about. This little symbol over here means when you do that, you'll clear all black and yellow cards from the marketplace, and the colors may differ, but you'll clear all black and yellow cards from the marketplace, and then move the Great Inky One once for each card you discarded, activating along the way. So you get extra activations, getting extra resources. That's a fun and possibly overpowered ability in the game. You're also going to have these starter cards. That's 0 cost card I pulled aside. There's 4 of these in the deck. The 4 0 cost cards. Whenever you earn your first tentacle, you're going to take one of these cards, add to your hand. It costs 0. It's just an extra ability you have your hands on. And then we have the Forbidden Knowledge. Forbidden Knowledge are going to be these 4 tokens up here, and the way these work is you can trade in 13 of a resource in order to get 2 tentacles in a single shot, which is incredibly powerful, but you also need to have 13 of resource, and if you recall, you can only end your turn with up to 8, so you have to have the max, and then get 5 more on a turn in order to be able to trade in. That's basically how you play Cosmoctopus. You move the Great Inky One around the board, you gather resources and, well, resources, cards, or whatever it is across the course of that. You use those to pay for cards, you improve your tableau with black and yellow cards, you get instant effects with red cards, and you ultimately get most of your tentacles from the green cards, although you could get most of your tentacles from other things, but ideally from the green cards. And that's Cosmoctopus. There's an additional solo mode, which we won't heavily get into. I'll touch upon it a bit in my opinion, but we'll get into, we'll talk more about things. In fact, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook on this is very easy to dive into. This is a very accessible, easy to teach, easy to play game. Comes in at around 45 minutes per game or so, somewhere in that range, 30 to 45 minutes per game, and just it's a very simple step-by-step game to pick up, to understand, to get into. It has depth through the cards, but the action sequences: move Cosmoctopus, does what it says on the tile, then play cards. Very easy to get up and running in this game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with the adorable theme. In fact, there's a rule I forgot. The rule is when you're done with your turn, you're going to take the Great Inky One and you're going to point it to whoever's next, which means whenever you see the Great Inky One staring at you, it means it's probably your turn. It's a whimsical little rule, and I find it's not that helpful in a 2-player game, but I've played this at 4 players as well, and it really helps at a 4-player game. In case you're ever wondering whose turn it is, looking into the great soulless eyes of a pink fleshy mound of plastic, it'll do it for you. It'll tell you that it's your turn. And so the charm in general of the game, of building out these little tentacles, of moving Cosmoctopus, of just the general bizarre theme. I mean, there are, like, for instance, to give you an example here, one of the things I like about the game is the wide variety of ways to gather tentacles, which is not a sentence I get to utter on a day-by-day basis, and that's fun to be able to utter here. This game gives you the charm of the theme, the art, the production, all of those things are present to begin with. But then, more importantly, because I am more of a mechanics-based individual, I find that the wide variety of powers and abilities, the wide variety of cards you have, there's a giant deck of cards, and I think every single card is unique. I'm not 100% certain, but I think every single card in this deck is unique. It seems, I don't think I've ever seen 2 cards come out the same game, so the question is just, have I not been lucky enough? I don't know. I feel every single card in this deck is unique, giving you a large amount of powers and abilities in 4 different branches of what they do, giving you a ton of ways to explore how you build up your tableau and ultimately how you achieve your tentacles. You're trying to do both in the game. You need to build up your engine so you can get better and faster, but if you spend too much time building up your engine, that's me, then someone else will win while you have the coolest engine ever. I do have the coolest engine ever. I also don't think I've actually won this game. That's neither here nor there. But this game has tableau building. It has powers and abilities. It has ways you're going to combine things things to find your pathway forward. And there are different ways to gather tentacles. Forbidden knowledge is going to be a key aspect of the game where you can very possibly get like 4 tentacles worth of forbidden knowledge across the course of the game by gathering 2 of those tokens if you're willing to spend the time, effort, energy to build them up, and the other players aren't doing so. You have that aspect you're trying to go for, the challenge of just building up resources to get half your tentacles. Or you can build up a ton of green cards while also gathering a few yellow cards that'll help you fill slots automatically, and you can just charge through gathering various tokens through those green cards. Now, this one game I saw someone who just had they had 3 cards that filled up spots on the tentacles, and they're just playing green cards and then automatically filling them, and it was incredibly fun to watch them go from last place to winning the game at the last minute. This game does give you different ways to charge forward, different things to consider, and different card combinations you're going to want to be mindful of as you go through the game, trying to get to what you want to, well, get done, to accomplish, what syncs well with your engine in the game. So there's tableau building, there's a ton of cards, there's a wide variety of powers and abilities, and a wide variety of ways to pursue victory in this game, and there's also the variety of how you go ahead and build this board. Now, while it doesn't drastically change up the experience you'll have, there are different configurations. You can make your own, you can go with the back of the rulebook suggestions that they have. You can use the portals to create adjacencies or to create 2 separate ecosystems. So there are additional ways to play with what the basic puzzle over here is in order to further add to your variability of the experience. As far as what I don't like in the game, a few things. First of all, I'm going to touch on the solo mode. I've played the solo mode. I didn't find the solo mode rewarding in this, and I think that's very much a case-by-case thing. I am particular, I would say, while I play a lot of solo games, I do find that I am someone who's particular about the kinds of solo modes that I enjoy when it's not, I guess, meant as a solo game. I think Cosmoctopus is meant as a, it's meant as a very tricky word because there's so many different kinds of players. I would say when a game is designed to be both a multiplayer and solo experience, and the multiplayer experience is not cooperative, I tend to be a bit more picky about solo modes. And I found that this was kind of a race against the private investigator in a way that I didn't personally find rewarding. You may well, I don't know. For me, the solo mode didn't work quite as well for me. But again, understand I am particular about my solo modes in multiplayer games. Past that, I'd say that some cards do feel too strong. In particular, cards that clear the market over here, those I find in our group are always snapped up right away. The cards that will go ahead and clear the market, giving you getting rid of some cards and giving you extra Cosmoctopus movement around the board. Those just give you a ton of extra resources and cards in a way that they are always picked up incredibly quickly and utilized incredibly quickly. So those are potentially too strong, and if they are too strong, then the luck of the draw of when they come out, that's definitely a factor. But I'd say those are kind of side complaints. For me, the only real complaint I have against Cosmoctopus, as far as something that does meaningfully impact my experience, is that the core tiles in the game, the core 8 tiles, are basically just take 3 of resource or take a resource and a card. And I find the tiles themselves are not as interesting as I'd like. Even these 4 other tiles they have that you mix in 1 per game, I find that they're not that interesting as far as what they do. I think the card play in this game is amazing. I love the card play in Cosmoctopus. It gives you a ton to consider. But a bulk of what you do, in fact, I'd say 2/3 of what you do, is moving Cosmoctopus across space trying to gather resources. And I found that puzzle, which is the bulk of what you're doing. That's what you do every single turn you are moving around Cosmoctopus, and not every single turn will you play a card. And so I find that the action that is happening every turn is a little bit repetitive and didn't change up drastically even as you rotate or move up the board. I kind of want to see this same game. I love that. Well, we'll talk about my overall opinion later, but I want to see this same game with an expansion that comes out giving you a whole set of expansion tiles that are just far more interesting as far as the way these interweave with the rest of the system. Those were just a little repetitive game to game. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, luck of the draw, which we touched upon a little bit with those more powerful cards, but even just forgetting those more powerful cards, just what works well with your engine. There are times where you have an engine that really needs green cards, and you may not get them. The card market is only 3 cards. The card market only has 3 cards present at any given time, and I find that with the amount of even just, there's 4 types of cards, just forget even which cards will come out, there's 4 types of cards, and having a 3-card card market, I don't think there's necessarily a ton to be able to really find things that work well for your engine, so there's definitely a degree of luck of the draw present, and that may or may not bother you as far as how you try to, well, get the right cards for what you're trying to do in the game. I'll also say that the game can end fairly quickly once it ramps up. This is a game where going from 0 tentacles to 4 tentacles will take you 30 minutes of the experience, and then in the next 10 minutes you'll knock out the other half because of the nature of the tableau building. This game ramps up quickly, and at first you're challenged, you're struggling, you're trying to get, oh great, I finally got my first tentacle, and before you know it, someone has 3, and before you know it, the game is over. So it does have that ramp up. Again, I said like the game for us is around 45 minutes. Games at 60 to 90, I don't think it's been a 60 to 90 minute game for me. This is a game that I've generally been knocking out in I'm surprised by that. I'm surprised by the 60 to 90. This is a game I've been knocking out in that 45, maybe 60 range, maybe, even at 4 players. As far as final thoughts on Cosmoctopus, I really enjoy this game, but it is a game that did go down a bit for me from my first plays across subsequent plays. My first experience, I was all in on this. I was like, I love the experience. It really feeds into what I like in games, which is trying to find that puzzle with powers and abilities, with where you cut off the tableau building. I really, really enjoyed it. And I still do, to be clear, but the repetitiveness of the core aspect of the puzzle has certainly dropped it down a bit for me. For me, this is a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy it. I'm still having a lot of fun with it. I just find the amount of cards and the variety of cards really give you different ways to examine that core puzzle, and it gives you that thinky, or inky, pun intended, that inky aspect of trying to dive into different strategies, different ways to combine things in a way that is rewarding, but also that core movement puzzle across the depths of the galaxy. That part's just a drop repetitive, and it does take away a bit from my experience. I think that if this was swapped out for something far more compelling or interesting as far as the central mechanism of gathering resources, that could really take this game to the next level for me. But for me, overall, still very much enjoy it. A 4 out of 5. That's Cosmoctopus from Paperfort Games, Henry Audubon, distributed by Lucky Duck, and all those fun things. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Parks. Parks is a game designed by Henry Audubon that does have similar DNA to it as far as the nature of wandering around, gathering resources, and using those resources to fulfill your goals. That's very much present in Cosmoctopus, although very different in terms of the actual implementation, but the base DNA is very much there. And if you're looking for something that I think to me felt fairly similar, Everdell. Everdell is very different in terms of the way you're actually going to dive into it, but again, same idea. You have different resources, you're gathering those resources, you're using those resources towards cards that are going to interact with your engine. You have a few types of cards. I very much feel this gives me Everdell vibes while being very different in, well, everything else, but it does give me Everdell vibes as far as the core structure of how this one operates. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.